Alrighty, so I hope you guys are excited. This is my first ever NBA video. Really excited to kind of open this up. I've been following basketball a lot more this season. Obviously, my hockey video is going to come out on Thanksgiving break. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on there. But this is my first ever basketball video. I follow the NBA a lot, especially this season. Don't think that like since I don't post NBA on this channel that I don't follow it because that's just not true. And this season in particular, I've been following it a lot. I have a fantasy team, so I've been playing a lot. I kind of wish I made predictions, um, but I just got caught up in school. Like I'm sorry, I just got a lot of work. Um, but anyways, so in this video, we're basically just going to go over the teams right now that are in the playoffs and then look at some teams that are on the outside looking in. So in first place in the East, we have the Wizards. Here's what I'll say about the Wizards. They're not going to sustain being in first place, but what they did over the offseason was incredible. Hats off to Tommy Shepard. He basically got four like really solid role players to add to their rotation. And the problem with the Wizards last year was they had Beal and Westbrook, right? And I guess Westbrook was like pretty decent, but they didn't have a lot of like depth, like at all. Like they had to play Mo Wagner a lot. They lost Thomas Bryant, which hurt. Luckily, they got Gafford, who really helped out. But they had to play guys like McRae, Isaac Bonga, just guys who really aren't NBA level players. And instead, they traded Russ. They got three NBA level role players: Kentavious Caldwell Pope, Kuzma, whatever. Maybe he's a little better than a role player, and then Montrezl Harrell. They're all playing great. And then he also got Kispert in the draft. So those are four really just solid players that they added to their rotation. In addition, they replaced Russ with Spencer Dinwiddie. And Spencer Dinwiddie's like pretty good. I mean, he's a little worse than like Russell Westbrook. So great job by Washington this offseason. Like they just nailed it. A plus. Um, and look, I think they'll make the playoffs and they'll be competitive. And this is a great sign for the franchise because they were, one bad season away from trading Beal and probably just knocking this whole thing down and calling it a day. Um, so, yeah, that's that with the Wizards. I think they'll finish probably third, fourth, something like that. Um, but, so far, really impressive. Um, Next up, we have the Bulls. So the Bulls are an interesting team. They have four really, really good players. They have Lonzo Ball, uh, Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan. So those, right off the bat, those are four really, really good players. And they did a great job this offseason, revamping their team, just making them more competitive. They got Caruso to Derek Jones from the Heats helping them out. Problem with the Bulls is their depth. They don't have a lot of depth, and DeRozan, Vucevic, Ball, Levine, they're all gonna have to play like 40 minutes every game in order for them to be competitive because their role players are awful. They lost Patrick Williams, which really hurts because that's just gonna put more pressure on DeRozan, Levine, etc. Same with Kobe White. They lost him too. So they desperately need a guy who's just going to help them compete. Just like a role player. They need someone like, let me think. Who's someone that could be available? I would say like TJ Warren, but like a guy on like a losing team that's going to be available. I don't know, maybe like Devin Vassell, probably not. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm not coming up with names right now. But they just need a role player like that, who's going to help their team out, play in their rotation a bit, and just make them a more competitive team. But I like where the Bulls are going. I think they'll make the playoffs. Are they for real? Like, they're not the second best team in the East, but they're pretty good. Next, we have the Nets. The Nets are it'll be interesting to see what happens with Kyrie. I mean, I would trade him as soon as I could, and not to get a star, just get some depth to the rotation. And then of course they have KD and who's had an incredible season, and Harden's been pretty good, I think. Not like insane, but again, they do. If I'm them, I'm trading Irving just to get some role players because I think his trade value is so diminished, and you got to get something for him. I don't really want him on my team anymore just because he's just throwing fits all the time and he's just kind of a liability to have on your team. So I think they're probably the best team in the East. Them are the Bulls, but I don't really know what's up with the Bulls. Sorry, the Bulls. Excuse me, the Bucks. So, I think as time unfolds, they're gonna crawl to the top of the standings and probably take first place. But good start to the regular season for them. Next up, we have the Sixers, who are in fourth place. The Sixers, so they haven't had Embiid for the last two games, which both they have lost. Let me take a look. They lost their last two without Embiid. Yep. So they lost to the Bucks. They've lost their last three, and two of those have not been with Embiid. I thought they were going to win last night, but against the Raptors, they did not. Um, I love Maxey. I love Shake Milton. I think those guys are both really good players. Interesting. I don't want to talk about the Ben Simmons situation because it's just everything I hear about. It's just so annoying. Like I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't. He's like a fine player. I don't know. I don't want to talk about Ben Simmons, but sorry, I got all defensive all of a sudden. One thing I want to say about them is Seth Curry is really good. Like he's a really underrated player. Like he's a good shooter. He's a really good shooter. He doesn't play a lot of defense, sure, but like he's a really good offensive player. Like obviously he's not as good as Steph, but like he's a very underrated offensive player. Like I just think he's a really good shooter. They have like pretty decent role players. They have Andre Drummond, who's a great center to come off the bench. They have Korkmaz, who's been shooting great. That one game, I think it was against the Knicks. He just like took over. He was just draining threes. He had like 25 points. It was an insane performance. Um, and then they have Niang, who's been good. Again, like I said, love Shake Milton. Danny Green's another good role player. So they have some good role players. They have some depth. They're always an adventure in the playoffs. You just have no idea what's going to happen with them. Are they one of the best teams in the East? Yes, they are. And I totally, I agree with that. They're one of the best teams in the East. So, interesting to see what happens with them in the playoffs. Next off, we have one of my favorite teams to cover in the East. One of the most intriguing teams, finally. For a while, the Cavaliers were just the most boring team ever to watch, and it was just like anytime I had to watch their highlights, I would just like literally just it was horrible. So they have a really exciting team this year. First off, I trashed them for signing Jared Allen, and that was I thought they paid him too much money, and I was completely wrong on that. He and Evan Mobley are such a duo, and Allen's like he's such a good player. He gets so many blocks, so many rebounds. He's just a really good center. He plays his role really well, and he scores points too. Interesting thing is Darius Garland. Darius Garland's a lot better than I thought he was. Great 3-point range. Not a great drive guy who can drive to the basket. Is he better than Sexton? I don't know, but they need to hold on to both of them. A lot of people are like, oh, they gotta trade. They gotta trade Sexton or Garland. Pick one, and they gotta trade him. I disagree with that. I think you hold on to both of them. Garland's really good though, and I really like Colin Sexton too. In terms of their role players, they have some really good role players. Um, Seti Osman, great 3-point shooter, kind of like a Furkan Korkmaz type guy. Good 3-point shooter. Rubio's been good for them this year. He had a great game the other day. I think it was against the Knicks, maybe, where he was he was just draining threes. Dylan Windler, shout out to him. He's another nice role player they have. Can knock down the three too. Um, and then they have Isaac Okoro, seventh pick out of Auburn. We'll see what he can do, man. I'm looking for something out of him. I know he's a good defender, but I think he needs to start scoring a little more for him to, be worth that seventh pick. And then Dean Wade. Shout out to Dean Wade. Dean Wade went to Kansas State. I remember he played against Wake Forest in the tournament. He's a really good basketball player. Great defender. Probably isn't going to score a lot of points, but he's just a good basketball player. He defends really well, gets rebounds, good passer, really smart, good basketball IQ, great role player, and a great find by Cleveland to get him. Now, they also have, of course, Evan Mobley. I haven't mentioned him yet. He's on my fantasy team and has just been an absolute animal this year. Definitely the best rookie so far. And he, I just didn't expect him to be this good defensively. He's really confident. He's playing at such a high level, can shoot the three well, just does everything. And he's kind of like Kevin Garnett. I mean, and I know Bill Simmons was praising him too. I'm on the Mobley train now. He's a beast. So Cavs are fifth in the East right now. I don't think they're the fifth best team in the East, but I think they'll definitely make the playoffs. Not definitely, but I think they can make the playoffs. They just got to be consistent. Maybe add another guy into that rotation, but they have a well-built team, and if they keep playing how they're playing, I think they should make the playoffs. Next up, we have the Miami Heat. So the Heat have lost their last three, including a tough loss last night to the Clippers. Uh, that was really, they were up by like 17 points, and I mean, like, come on, that's just ridiculous. That was a ridiculous loss by them. Um, Waiting for their star power to show. To be honest, definitely expected Hero to be good this season, and he is. I just didn't think he played well last year. He's just a better player than that, and um, Lowry also having a good season. Adebayo playing well. They got their core guys, Duncan Robinson. Um, Not great depth. Would like to see some more depth. They got PJ Tucker. I don't know if he's a 27-minute guy on a playoff team. Um, but they have their core guys who are pretty good. Jimmy Butler also as well. Um, so we'll see. I'm not a huge fan of their team. I think they need more defense. I think they just have a lot of guys who can score. Butler's a great defender though. I don't know. I think they'll probably be towards the top of the standings though, just because just have a lot. They have a great starting five, and they just have more. They just have better players than the Cavaliers and even the Wizards, honestly. Um, so I like the Heat. They'll definitely make the playoffs for sure. How far they can go though, I don't know. The East is wide open this year, honestly. Next up, we have the Knicks. Knicks again pretty much have the same team as last year. They just added Evan Fournier and, if I'm not Kemba Walker too. So some nice offensive additions, more scoring probably, which is what they needed. And Obi Toppin's playing better this year. He had 14 points yesterday. And so I honestly have no idea what the Knicks are going to do this year, like in performance wise. I really don't know what they're capable of. I don't know. I just don't know really what they're. I just think they're very unpredictable. I think they have a lot of really good players. That's such a lame statement, but they have like they're pretty deep. They got like 10. They're 10 deep. Let me just like read out the guys they play. Like, I mean, everyone in their rotation is an NBA player. Like Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, Fournier, Walker, Derrick Rose, Quickly, Obi Toppin, Alec Burks. Like those are all good NBA players, and if you can rotate those guys, it's going to be great for stamina, longevity. You're not going to have as many injuries. So I think they could be like an 8 seed. Um, then last in the eighth spot we have the Raptors. The Raptors, of course, got Scotty Barnes in the draft. Absolute stud, great player. Funny thing is, one of my friends said, who played against him in high school, he said, yeah, when we played IMG, or I think it was Montverde, Scotty Barnes was the best player on the court. He was better than Cade Cunningham. And I thought that was just a really interesting statement. And he's just been an absolute stud. Typical Florida State player, just like athletically absurd, great defender, can jump out of the gym. Just he's just a stud. And then they got Precious Achiuwa. They got Goran Dragic, who hasn't been performing that well. Obviously, they got Savi Mikhailuk from the Pistons. So they added some depth to their roster. Obviously, they lost Kyle Lowry, which is kind of brutal. But I think his time in Toronto was also kind of coming to an end. Um, that's kind of lame, but I don't know. They have a decent amount of depth, and I really like their team. They have the best coach in the league, in my opinion, in Nick Nurse. So they could definitely sneak in as an 8 seed. But I'm definitely going to be following Scotty Barnes. He's just an absolute stud, and I'm happy he's having a good season. So the Bucks aren't in the playoffs right now. Big surprise for me. They'll definitely find their way in there. They're 6-6. Hornets aren't in the playoffs either. They're 6-7. I did not think they were that bad. Celtics 5-6. We're a mess. We can't. We just added guys who play offense and not defense. Richardson's not a good defender. Schroeder is an awful defender. Good point guard, but just awful defender. So we don't really play a lot of defense, and it's I'm hoping that we can start coaching defense because it's been it's been brutal. But they've been good recently defensively. Held the Magic to 79, held the Heat to 78, held the Mavericks to 107, Raptors 88. Like, we've been playing really good defense recently. So hopefully we can continue that and just keep playing well. Pacers also not in the playoffs. Big surprise for me. I'm a huge Malcolm Brogdon fan. He's on my fantasy team. I think he's better than Ben Simmons. I think he's an awesome player. So underrated. He's my new Drew Holiday. I think Malcolm Brogdon is such a good player, very underrated. They lost Aaron Holiday. They lost who else did they lose? I can't remember. I don't know what's up with Karis LeVert also. But anyways, Duarte, great draft pick. He's shown a lot of promise. So good pick by them. Miles Turner has also been pretty good. Sabonis, good player. T.J. McConnell, good player. Signed Torrey Craig. So when they get T.J. Warren back, and I think they have who did I just mention? Karis LeVert. Karis LeVert back out for a second. All right, so he's just injured right now, but he'll be back. So they have some good players, and I think they could definitely make it into the playoffs. I don't see the Raptors or Knicks making the playoffs, if that's my prediction. So that's that. And then, of course, you got the Magic in Detroit, who are both rebuilding. I thought Detroit would be better, but they just don't have any depth, really, and Cunningham isn't as good as I thought he was in terms of scoring. Obviously, I'm not calling him a bust or anything. I just thought he'd have a little bit better of a start in terms of scoring-wise. Jeremy Grant's also such a good player. I wish they kicked Christian Wood. That was so stupid. That's also a role player the Bulls could use. There you go. Boom. Christian Wood. Someone you can add to the rotation pretty easily. Or John Wall. So that's that for the East. Who else could they have? Gary Harris. Okay. So that's it for the East. If there's any other teams. Hawks also playing horrible defense this year. So that's that for the East. Let's move to the West.